Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. In the winter of 1937, a book was published that would go on to sell over 100 million copies. Not a novel, not a story about adventure or war or love. A book about how a man thinks, how a man desires, how a man decides, and what happens when that decision is made so completely that the universe itself seems to rearrange around it. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years of his life interviewing the wealthiest men in America. He sat with Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and hundreds more. He asked them one question in 100 different ways. How did you do it? The answers were not about luck. They were not about education or family or timing. They were about something happening inside the mind long before anything happened in the world. This is the story of Marcus, a man who read Think and Grow Rich for the first time at 32 and thought it was interesting, who read it again at 36 and felt the floor disappear beneath him, because this time he understood it. What changed in those 4 years was not the book, it was him. Marcus grew up in a house where money was discussed the way bad weather is discussed, with worry, with resignation, with the unspoken agreement that it arrives and leaves on its own. His father worked the same factory for 31 years. His mother kept a jar on the kitchen counter where she put coins when there were coins to put. When Marcus was 9, he asked what the jar was for. His mother said, "For when things go wrong." He absorbed this, not as a lesson, as a fact of nature. By 32, he was working in logistics, making enough to stay one step ahead of his bills. He was not unhappy. He was just stuck. A colleague lent him a copy of Think and Grow Rich. He read it in a week. He thought, "This is motivating." He put it on a shelf. 4 years passed. His father died of a heart attack at 63, 1 year before he was scheduled to retire. At the funeral, Marcus looked at the people in the room and realized that most of them had never once decided what they wanted. They had accepted, they had endured, they had managed, but they had never decided. He went home. He took the book off the shelf. Hill's first principle is not goal setting. It is not planning. It is not discipline. It is desire, not the casual kind. Hill calls it a burning desire, a fixed, specific, all-consuming want that occupies the mind the way fire occupies a room. Marcus sat at his kitchen table the night after his father's funeral and wrote one sentence on a piece of paper. "Within 3 years, I will have $100,000 in liquid savings. In exchange, I will work 6 days a week on building a service business. I will learn everything about sales and operations, and I will not stop." He read it aloud, twice. He felt nothing. Hill says this is fine. The feeling comes later. The decision comes first. Marcus folded the paper and put it in his wallet. He kept it there for 3 years. The second principle Hill writes about is faith, not religious faith, not blind optimism. The ability to believe in an outcome before there's any evidence for it. Hill calls this autosuggestion, the practice of repeating your desire with such frequency and emotion that your subconscious mind begins to accept it as fact and begins, without your conscious direction, to move toward it. Every morning at 5:30, before anyone else in his building was awake, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and read his piece of paper aloud. He read the number, the deadline, the plan. He read it slowly, and he tried, even on the mornings when it felt absurd, to feel what it would feel like to already have it. He did this for 11 months before he saw any results. Not because the universe was slow, because he was. The practice was changing something in him that he could not yet see. The slow reorientation of a man who had spent his whole life reacting toward a man who was beginning, for the first time, to intend. Hill's third principle destroyed one of the most common lies Marcus had ever been told. That education meant degrees, that knowledge meant school, that a man without a formal credential was somehow less equipped to build wealth. Hill says that general knowledge is almost useless for accumulating wealth. What matters is specialized knowledge. Deep, specific, actionable expertise in a narrow area that other people need and will pay for. Marcus looked at what he knew. 8 years in logistics. He understood supply chains, shipping routes, the specific pain points of small businesses trying to move product. He spent 6 months reading everything he could find about freight brokerage. He learned the margins, the regulations, the software, the relationships. He was not waiting to be ready. He was building the knowledge that would make him dangerous. By month 7, he knew more about freight brokerage than anyone he had ever worked with. He registered his company on a Tuesday afternoon. No clients, no office, a laptop, a phone, and a piece of paper in his wallet. Hill talks about persistence, the refusal to accept failure as permanent. He tells the story of a man who stopped digging for gold 3 feet from a vein that would have made him a millionaire. Marcus thought about this story the day he made 67 cold calls and got hung up on 63 times. 4 people talked to him. 1 asked him a question he could not answer on the spot. He stayed on the phone, told the truth, said he would find out, called back in 2 hours with the answer. That man became his first client. 3 shipments a month, a margin thin enough that Marcus was making approximately $11 an hour. He did not celebrate. He delivered, he followed up, he fixed the one problem that arose without being asked. 3 weeks later, the client referred him to someone else. Hill says the most successful men were not the most talented, they were the most persistent. Marcus was beginning to understand, not as a concept, as a Tuesday afternoon on a phone that kept hanging up. Hill's 4th principle is one that Marcus resisted the longest. The mastermind. The idea that no man builds something great entirely alone, that wealth requires the harmonious cooperation of others moving toward aligned goals. Marcus had been raised to be self-sufficient, to not ask for help. He associated needing others with weakness. Hill says this is one of the most expensive beliefs a man can carry. In month 14, Marcus joined a small business owners group that met every Wednesday at 7 in the morning. He almost didn't go. He went because he had read the chapter 3 times and decided to try it for 90 days. At the 3rd meeting, a man named Gerald, who ran a warehousing company, mentioned that he was constantly losing clients because he couldn't offer freight brokerage. He didn't know anyone in the space he trusted. Marcus said nothing during the meeting. He called Gerald the next morning. Within 60 days, Gerald had referred 4 clients to Marcus. Within 6 months, they had a formal referral agreement. Within a year, Marcus was running the freight side of Gerald's entire operation. He had not found Gerald by accident. He had created the conditions for Gerald to appear. 2 years and 9 months after his father's funeral, Marcus sat in his car outside a bank. He had just reviewed his accounts. The number was $104,000. He sat there for a long time. He did not feel the explosion of emotion he had expected. He felt something quieter, a kind of deep recognition, as if some part of him had known this was coming and had been waiting for the rest of him to catch up. He took the piece of paper out of his wallet. It was soft now, worn at the folds, the ink slightly faded. He read it one more time. "Within 3 years, I will have $100,000 in liquid savings." He had done it in 2 years and 9 months. Hill says that when a man reaches a goal set through burning desire, faith, and persistence, he does not stop. He recalibrates. He writes a new number. He folds a new piece of paper. Marcus did exactly that. A larger number, a new deadline, a new plan. He read it aloud twice in the car. Then he drove home. People misread this book constantly. They read it as a book about money. It is not. It is a book about the relationship between the mind and reality, about the mechanism by which a thought, held with sufficient clarity and desire and persistence, eventually becomes a physical thing. Hill did not invent this. He documented it. He sat with Carnegie, Ford, Edison, Rockefeller, and he reverse engineered the process. The process requires you to decide specifically what you want, to repeat that decision until your subconscious accepts it, to acquire the knowledge your goal demands, to build alliances that multiply your reach, and to persist through the period when there is no visible evidence that any of it is working. Most men quit in that period. Marcus almost did. 4 times. He didn't. And now he runs a business that generates more in a month than his father earned in a year. He is not telling you this to impress you. He is telling you this because he almost didn't pick the book back up. Don't be that man. Read the book, then live it. Stay cold. Keep building.